Thank holy goodness alive that the debates are over. Come on, is it really a debate when you're dealing with liberty versus tyranny? I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is the Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, the one, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Look, I gotta tell you, I'm making a vow to you. You know about our Pat Riot Club. You join the Patriot Club, we will honor Pat Riot, the student who named it that, and I will do this. If we can get to 500 Patriot Club members, 500, I will put full Boy George makeup on, and I will sing to you the entire song, I'll Tumble For You from the 1980s. You just can't wait to see this. 500 Pat Riot people. Let's make that happen. And all you have to do is go over to thepatriotclub.us. That's patriotclub.us to get me into my Boy George costume. Yes, I've already got it. The Pat Riot Club appreciates your support. All right, Katie is kicking things off with our weekly look at the health of our republic, which I suspect is a little healthier that we don't have to listen to these two guys go at each other again.
You suck. No, you suck. Well, frack off. Well, actually, not according to Joe. Welcome to the final debate of presidential election 2020. Come on, man. Tick another pain and torture event off the list for this 2020 election cycle. Yes, we have concluded the final sales pitch on the national stage as the candidates wrapped up the final debate on Thursday night. And with President Trump and Joe Biden both muted for at least portions, we actually heard some things, including a giant frack up by Biden. But before we get to that, did you watch the debate? And did you find anything that trips your trigger, floats your boat, charges your batteries? How could you not? I mean, come on.
Come on. Come on. So don't worry about it. Come on. Come on. Come on, folks. Come on. He's talked about his good buddy who's a thug. A thug. There's a reason why he's bringing up all this malarkey. Give me a break.
At least the debate was much more civil than last time when it was grumpy old men fighting on the ice. This time, it was just two old engines who puttered along and then revved to full speed with their fossil fuels along for the ride. But again, we'll get to all that oil talk later. I don't know about you, but for me, this entire election cycle, the American people have felt like candidates are the Pinkies, and we are the Ciccolinis in duck soup. We're out here asking, especially Joe, why he won't answer the dang question.
You understand that this guy, he's a worker for me. I ask him something, you know, tell me nothing. I ask him why I don't speak. All the time he don't speak. What do you think he do? He make a fight to go like this.
Hey, what's the idea?
Oh, that's not my idea. That's his idea. All the time I say something, he don't say nothing. Every time I speak...
Will you shut up?
We could go through the entire debate, but let's be honest. If you paid any attention to the candidates for the past 10 months, you know where they stand. Trump is focused on bringing the economy back from prior to the virus's arrival, and Joe is focused on staying coherent and appeasing the left. Oh, but he has a plan, whatever that may be, because, as always, he was so very specific.
And please be specific. What would that look like?
And so, folks, I will take care of this. I will end this. I will make sure we have a plan. And I am very proud of my plan. It's gotten endorsed by all the major labor unions, as well as a whole range of other people who, in fact, are concerned in the medical field.
Trump was smart in hammering home the fact that Biden has been in politics for 47 years, with the most recent 8 years being as vice president. And yet, what has he done? No one actually knows his so-called plan for anything.
Why didn't you get it done? You had 8 years with Obama. You know why, Joe? Because you're all talk and no action.
All right, Vice President Biden, and then we're going to move on to the next section.
We had a Republican Congress. That's the answer.
Well, you got to talk him into it, Joe.
Yeah, just listen to that awkward silence. Joe was actually wondering if he took his Metamucil this morning. But really, he was just trying to come up with his next political shtick line that he keeps giving, because Biden tries to sound political, and at the same time, like he actually cares about you and for me. But it was the same old line he used last time, which in all likelihood, he forgot he had ever said. But we didn't forget, because it sounded just as weird.
It's not about his family and my family. It's about your family. You folks home will have an empty chair at the kitchen table this morning. That man or wife going to bed tonight and reaching over to try to touch their, out of habit, where their wife or husband was, is gone. How many of you home are worried and rolling around in bed tonight wondering what in God's name you're going to do if you get sick?
You folks at home, how many of you are just sitting on the can, waiting for that cheese block to move a little? Joe is here for you, Metamucil in hand. What is he even saying?
Just a typical politician when I see that.
Let's talk about
I'm not
North
a typical
Korea now.
politician.
Okay,
That's why I got elected.
Let's
get off the subject of China. Let's talk sitting around the table.
All right.
Come on, Joe, you can do better.
But he can't do better. He's a politician, so the words that come out of his mouth are either disingenuous and or irrelevant. Irrelevant, I say.
Now I ask you one. What is it has a trunk but no key, weighs 2,000 pounds and lives in a circus?
That's irrelevant.
Irrelevant? Hey, that's the answer. There's a whole lot of relevance in the circus.
And there were many a circus tricks happening. But unlike a circus where people are generally happy, Biden brought the doom and gloom to the entire debate.
He says that we're learning to live with it. People are learning to die with it. And your family's hurting badly. We're about to go into a dark winter. A dark winter. Climate change and climate warming, the global warming, is an existential threat to humanity. We have a moral obligation to deal with it. And we're told by all the leading scientists in the world we don't have much time. We're going to pass the point of no return within the next 8 to 10 years.
What is with former vice presidents saying all this climate hysteria? Hey, Al Gore, I think someone just stole your line. Joe was being Joe, avoiding facts and being all negative about the future until he laid claim that Americans are calm.
Americans don't panic. He panicked.
I'm rubber and you're glue, blah, blah, blah. Now, speaking of the him and not me or me and not him, Trump and Biden laid out who each other is and why he was running to be president.
You know who I am. You know who he is. You know his character. You know my character.
You're the big man, I think. I am the least racist person in this room.
Abraham Lincoln here is one of the most racist presidents we've had in modern history.
You guys did nothing.
We did.
You know, Joe, I ran because of you. I ran because of Barack Obama.
He's a very confused guy. He thinks he's running against somebody else. He's running against Joe Biden. I'll be president of the United States, not vice president of the United States.
I'm stoked to hear that Trump is running against Joe Biden for the presidency, because a week ago, Joe was a little confused.
I'm running as a proud Democrat for the Senate.
But then, the big kaboom of the night. It was rather slick. The skids were greased and the oil was rubbed in. All right, enough with the euphemisms to explain how Joe Biden fracked up real hard.
And what about fracking?
All right,
now,
let me allow Vice President Biden to respond.
I never said I oppose fracking.
You said it on tape.
I did. Show the tape. Put it on your website.
I'll put it on.
Oh, frack me.
You know what Trump did, right? Just roll the footage.
Would there be any place for fossil fuels, including coal and fracking, in a Biden administration?
No, we would work it out. We would make sure it's eliminated and no more subsidies for either one of those. I guarantee you, we're going to end fossil fuel. No more, no new fracking.
I'd gradually move away from fracking.
And that's only half of the clip the Trump campaign put out.
You fracked up, pal.
He did indeed. And it's because Joe simply is not that smart.
He here may talk like an idiot and look like an idiot, but don't let that fool you. He really is an idiot.
And the media lets him get away with it. Case in point, earlier in the week, the real questions were asked of Joe Biden, as they always are, like, what flavor ice cream did you get, Mr. Biden? And after getting said ice cream, Joe called a full lid until Thursday, which you could assume was for debate prep, but we all know is probably because he actually has a dairy intolerance and he spent some time on the throne. And in case you want to witness the hard-hitting news question in the act, here you go.
Mr. Biden, what flavor did you get?
We got one vanilla, one chocolate, but I wanted to get what we call black and white. My name is Joe Biden, and I love ice cream.
Oh, how very woke of him to select vanilla and chocolate. But where is the strawberry, Joe? You racist. Concerning the debate, in typical media fashion, early poll results concerning the performances in the debate were heavily skewed to each network's fan base. So more Fox viewers thought Trump won, and more CNN viewers, all 15 of them who are stuck in an airport right now, thought that Biden won. Since we're on the topic of the media, it behooves me to take a few moments to address how the media likes to pleasure themselves. And there are some who do so more than, we'll say, the others, like CNN's Jeffrey Toobin, who this week was caught masturbating during a Zoom call with his colleagues. Supposedly, they were on the call to do an election simulation, but Toobin clearly heard erection stimulation. Just remember this, team. This Jeffrey did not hang himself. And this Jeffrey let himself hang. Know that there is a difference. But the second Jeffrey won't be fired because remember, the media likes to pleasure itself. Toobin just got a slap on the wrist with a suspension. Not the kind of slap he desires, but he keeps his job. And his bro boy, Brian Stelter, is sad about that punishment because he says Toobin is being sidelined at a pivotal moment. Well, maybe he shouldn't have sided his line during a Zoom meeting. Did the debate change your mind? No, probably not. But if the media would stop pleasuring themselves for 5 seconds, because that's probably all they have in them in a given stint, then they would be able to actually address some of the good points that were raised during the debate, and maybe Biden wouldn't get to call a full lid. I know, that's an oil pipe dream. Until next time, stay healthy, America.
Joined now by our international correspondent, Alex Newman. Alex, as always, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Duke. Great to be with you.
Well, there's a little bit of schadenfreude in this story for me because I've been saying for like 10 years and no one has listened to me. You got these universities and these university administrators who are screaming about sexism, racism, bigotry. They're talking about how our young girls are getting raped on college campuses. One out of every 5 girls on a college campus gets raped. Half of them are sexually assaulted. That we have nothing more. We have all sorts of racial incidents on our campus. And my response has already been, good. Good. Then let's fire the administrators. You're the people in charge of this. If indeed these lying, inflated numbers are true, then you should be fired, Mr. President, Mr. Chancellor. It's amazing how they've gotten away with this, right? Inflating these numbers to get more political activism, to get more money on campus, to get more attention, but then not being responsible for demonstrating that it's not true anymore. And Princeton University, one of the great Ivy League schools, has just done it and got called on it for the first time. Explain that story, Alex.
Yeah, this really is and I think it's a hilarious story, and I can't tell you how big I was smiling when I found out about this. So the president of Princeton University confessed that, under pressure from the progressive left-wing Looney Tunes, confessed that Princeton is actually this horrible racist institution, and it's plagued by systemic racism, and there's also the conscious incidents of bias and all the rest of it. And so, he did the standard progressive, oh, we're so racist, please forgive us. We don't even know that we're racist, but now we know that we're racist because we've been educated by the Marxists. And the Department of Education said, wait a minute here. You guys, every single year when you're applying for federal taxpayer money, promise and claim and swear that you are not racist and that you do not discriminate on the basis of race. It's required under the 1964 Civil Rights Act to be able to get federal money. So both of those things can't be true. You can't be plagued by racism and conscious examples of bias and at the same time certify that you are not discriminating based on race. And so now the U.S. Department of Education has launched an investigation. And, Betsy DeVos, people who watch this program know I'm not the biggest Betsy DeVos fan in the world, but she went on the radio and said, no, this is very serious. We need some answers here. Either they're racist or they're not. They can't be both. Let's find out what's going on here.
And again, I'm with you. You and I have both been very critical of her Common Core protectionism, her background in Common Core, her refusal to do anything to really change the makeup of the actual classroom in terms of what kids have been learning as our Secretary of Education. But on a lot of other issues, she's been good, including pushing back against the Obama Dear Colleague letter that allows young men to be persecuted without due process for claims of sexual harassment on campus. She's done a lot of things like that, including this one. So she's taking Princeton at their word. Finally, right? These college professors have been appeasing the left, have doing their progressive mea culpas, right? We are nothing but hotbeds of racism and prejudice and bigotry and homophobia and misogyny, and they've never been called for it. If you are presiding over that kind of a school, you have to step down. All of your diversity officers have to be fired. All of your chancellors and vice chancellors and deans need to go. You need to rehaul how you do faculty tenure. If you've tenured radical and racist, as you seem to be claiming, professors who do nothing to combat the climate of bigotry and intolerance, they got to go too. Bring everybody new in. Now, we're a long way from that. But Betsy DeVos said to them, okay, by your own admission now, in your confession to the Marxist left, we're going to investigate you. And the thing, too, that gets me, Alex, is now that it happened, you have university professors and universities all across the country who are begging the Federal Department of Education not to investigate Princeton. Don't do this. If you do this, right, you'll be shaming them. You'll be getting in the way of this. You can see from the outrage of all the other schools that they don't want this to happen to themselves either.
That's right. There's almost 100 university presidents, some of them very significant institutions, who are begging the Department of Education, please stop, don't call us on our hypocrisy and our lies. But, the Department of Education says, sorry, the law requires us to do this. You don't want us to obey the law. You don't want us to investigate. If you're telling us there's racism all over your university, how can we continue sending you all these federal tax dollars if you guys are a bunch of racists and you're discriminating? And the reality is most of these institutions are discriminating. In fact, Princeton has a policy, so do many other universities, to try to allow more preferred races in at the expense of other people who actually earn their spot there. That is racial discrimination. But I think the Department of Education is doing exactly the right thing here. Betsy DeVos deserves some credit. So does Trump.
He does. And that's why another reason voting for Trump is not an option. It is a mandate this year. After the break, we're going to talk more about this, Alex. Back again with Alex Newman. And at the end of our first segment, Alex, we left it with, this is not an option to vote for Donald Trump. You may not like his demeanor. You may not like his attitude. You may not like his swagger and his posturing. But the fact that he is overseeing a Department of Education, unlike the Arne Duncan Department of Barack Obama, which gave us Common Core, that is at least willing to call out this kind of dishonest race mongering, right? To actually enforce. We talked about how over 100 university officials are begging the Department of Education not to investigate Princeton's claims that they're racist. I mean, can you imagine how unwoke that is? In this day and age, you've got all of these woke ringleaders begging the federal government not to do a racial investigation of a institution that just claimed that they were full of racists.
This whole incident, Duke, just so perfectly illustrates the utter insanity, the utter idiocy that has taken over academia. How can they claim on the one hand that they're not racist, and then on the other hand claim that they are racist, and then claim that racism is evil, but then claim that the federal government shouldn't investigate when they admit that they're racist? I mean, you cannot hold all these things in your brain at the same time simultaneously and believe them all to be true. This is the ultimate example of cognitive dissonance, and yet these are the people running the institutions that are supposedly training up the leaders of tomorrow. Can you imagine what the leaders of tomorrow are going to look like when the leadership of these universities can say two things that are completely contradictory, that cannot coexist at the same time? I mean, what happened to basic logic? What happened to the law of non-contradiction? It's so utterly absurd, and yet these people seem to not realize how incredibly absurd it is.
Well, to these idiots, reason, law, non-contradiction are all white supremacist holdovers of Greek wisdom, right? But here's you and I both know what's really going on. These professors, these administrators, these college presidents, they really are racist, but not in the way they say they are. They're not universities are not places of racism against black and minority students. These are places that are bending over backwards to skirt the law to get those kids in. Completely unprepared kids who are not ready to succeed at a junior college, let alone the Ivy League, are getting in now because of the actual racism that's being experienced. We know with Harvard University, they just lost another lawsuit, right? The federal government's gone after them again, and they've already lost in one court about the idea that they are prejudiced against Asian Americans, right? So Asian Americans outperform both whites and blacks in the classroom and on the standardized tests, but places like Harvard are radically limiting the number of Asians that get in to favor more black and brown skinned candidates. In this case, literally discriminating against one minority group to benefit two others. So there are plenty of racism on college campuses, but it has nothing to do with targeting black and brown skinned minorities. It going after white and Asian kids.
It is. And when you think about this racism, Duke, it really is nefarious. It's horrifying. Imagine how you would feel as a very dark-skinned person at Harvard University, knowing that the university is deliberately discriminating against Asians, for example. You're always going to wonder, did I get in because of my skin color, or did I get in because I really deserve to be here? That's incredibly unfair to the people who actually earned their way into these institutions. And frankly, I think at this point, and I tell everybody who asks, don't send your kids to these idiot factories, these indoctrination centers posing as institutions of higher learning. They're disgraceful. That your kids can get all that knowledge and more outside of it without going deep into debt. And why, right? They've really just become progressive Marxist indoctrination centers. They serve no useful purpose other than raising up the next generation of dumbed down revolutionaries ready to tear down our society. And all of this, I think, is a perfect illustration of this insanity that has taken over academia. And I think it really shows you, after you get the tax subsidies out, all this would collapse in a free market. We ought to go back to a free market system and let all this idiocy collapse under the weight of its own contradictions.
Alex Newman, the Newman Report, thanks a lot. Again, like I said, we've been saying it for a long time, and it's finally good that someone has called out the universities on their BS.
I'm welcoming myself back so that we can have some time for the real education. Amoretti is a sonnet cycle published by Edmund Spenser in 1595. It describes his courtship and eventual marriage to Elizabeth Boyle. It was printed as part of a volume entitled Amoretti and Epithalamion, written not long since by Edmund Spenser.
Yeah, let's take a look at this. This is one of my favorite sonnets. Now, he was a contemporary of William Shakespeare, Edmund Spenser, and he wrote The Fairy Queen, which is it's the longest poem in the English language and one of the best. If you ever get a chance to read it, it's beautiful. But he also wrote this beautiful series of sonnets. Everybody worth their salt in the 16th century was writing sonnet cycles, series of sonnets devoted to a particular woman, or as Shakespeare's case, a love triangle. And the Amoretti, little loves, is what that literally means in Italian. The little love poems that he wrote to the woman he was deeply in love with, Elizabeth Boyle. And interestingly, oftentimes in the sonnets, the sonnet poet is lamenting how the woman he loves does not love him back. Spenser was not that guy. He had her love. And so there was no long pining for her. But yet he still wrote some of the most beautiful poems of his day. Take a look at this one. One day I wrote her name upon the strand. The strand is another name for beach. So Spenser and Elizabeth are walking down the beach on a nice sunsetting day, and he writes her name, takes a stick and writes her name, right, as a form of immortalizing their relationship, like carving it into a tree. Only trees weren't washed away, right? One day I wrote her name upon the strand, but came the waves and washed it away. Again I wrote it with a second hand, but came the tide, and the water made my pains, my efforts, his prey. For twice now I've tried it. Now Elizabeth, walking next to him, says, "Vain man," said she, "that dost in vain essay a mortal thing like me to so immortalize. For I myself," Elizabeth said, "shall, like this name you wrote in the sand, decay. And also my name, when I am dead, will be wiped out likewise." Now here's the turn. "Not so," said I, "not so," said Spenser. "Let baser things devise to die in dust. But you, my Elizabeth, you shall live by fame. My verse your virtues rare shall eternize, and in the heavens write your glorious name, where whenas death shall all the world subdue, our love shall live, and this later life renew." Quite lovely, lovely tribute. In fact, he actually knew, the poet, when he was writing the name in the sand, it would be erased. He wanted her to react to that reaction so he could talk to her about how my poetry will overcome time, death, and change. Beautiful stuff.
All right, as always, if you're a fan of this show, please consider a one-time tax-deductible donation of $99 toward our Patriot Club. And if you get to 499 members of the Patriot Club, I'll see to it that Dr. Duke does not, in fact, dress as Boy George, because no one needs to see that. Anyway, as a thank you, we're going to ship you a magnificent stainless steel tumbler etched with the words, "Freedom never tasted so good." So visit patriotclub.us. That's patriotclub.us. Now we're going to wrap things up with the fun fact of the day. With the exception of the first ever televised presidential debate between Kennedy and Nixon, which was 60 minutes long, all presidential general election debates have been 90 minutes. So 90 minutes every time you watch one.
And not only, if we get 500 followers, will I dress as Boy George, she will be one of the flock of seagulls. I vow it. I will be boy George, and she will be one of the flock of seagulls. And that's going to do it for this show. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke. She's Katie. Tell me you don't want to see her in that bright blue buzz. Did you run? Did you run so far away, Katie? Did you run?
I ran.
Until next time, stay 80s, my friends.